In October of 1999, the city of Annapolis, Maryland was forced to cut down the last surviving Liberty Tree. Once standing in all of the 13 original colonies, these Liberty Trees were majestic symbols of patriotism during the Revolutionary War period. The Sons of Liberty gathered beneath them to rail against British tyranny and discuss the natural rights of free men. Although Liberty Trees no longer stand, the revolutionary ideals they symbolized took root early.
I think during the revolutionary period, two very striking things happened to the idea of freedom in American history. One is that freedom is universalized. In other words, this is a country whose Declaration of Independence declares liberty to be an inalienable right of all mankind. Instead of being, as in the colonial period, something associated with particular types of people, particular groups. So the United States sort of establishes itself as this embodiment of universal freedom, no longer the rights of Englishmen, the rights of mankind. The second thing that happens during the revolutionary period is that freedom is democratized. Many Americans stake a claim to freedom which they hadn't had in the colonial period. Poorer people, men who don't own property, demand the right to vote, political freedom. Some women demand greater rights than they'd had before. Many slaves stake a claim to freedom. They say, look, this is a country founded on liberty. Why are we enslaved?
You realize, of course, that more slaves were freed by the Revolutionary War than any other single thing until the Civil War. So that this was a period where America could have gone in a variety of directions. From the standpoint of African Americans, this is a period where if you didn't know history, if you didn't know what was coming, if you were looking forward, there's a possibility that you might believe that a racially integrated America, a racially egalitarian America was possible.
For women, they've grown up in, certainly free women, have grown up in a world in which they've been called upon to support the revolution. Unfree women, enslaved women, indentured women have been hearing the language of freedom and equality, and many of them are saying, well, what about us? Post-revolutionary people who have been growing up in a world in which assumptions about their relationship to the state has changed radically. So we're starting to see in 1800 women starting to make those claims a little more collectively.
In 1800, I think most Americans assumed that Native American people would have to become like European Americans, that there was no place really for Native Americans as Native Americans within the broader spectrum of American society. And consequently, a government initiated a, quote, civilization program, which was designed to turn Native American people into small yeoman farmers. It didn't work very well.
The American Revolution was fought for freedom and independence, but it was also fought for land. Geography played a critical role in the Revolution and in the development of the new country.
What the American Revolution produced were a series of contiguous colonies along the Atlantic seaboard that cooperated with one another. The 13 that rebelled were all together. They all touched one another. They stretched from Georgia well, Maine was part of Massachusetts at that time, but along what we now know as the seaboard of the United States. But the favorable terms of the treaty were not so much that that Atlantic coastal plain became the United States, but then an area which is probably twice as large as the settled area east of the Appalachian Mountains, west of the mountains, and the mountains themselves were also included, areas which were not settled. The existing colonies gaining independence, but they are also gaining a future as well as a present. And it's that future which becomes so important for the development of the United States